That night, I came home earlier than I had planned. All I wanted to do was surprise my wife, Emily, after a week away on a business trip. But when I opened the door, I heard whispers and laughter coming from the living room. What I saw shattered my life to pieces. My wife and my 19-year-old stepson, Jake, in each other's arms. I didn't scream. I did not explode. I decided to act. And their betrayal was only the beginning of my game. My name's Matt Harrison. I'm 38, a project manager from Seattle, and up until that night, I thought I had a pretty solid life. Married to Emily for 12 years, running a small coffee shop together, raising my stepson Jake like he was my own. He's 19 now, a college kid who crashes at our place when he's not drowning in dorm life. I just wrapped up a week-long business trip in San Francisco, grueling meetings, endless emails, and decided to cut it short by a day. I pictured Emily's face lighting up when I walked through the door. A surprise, you know? Something to shake up the routine. Man, was I wrong about the kind of surprise waiting for me. The clock hit 11 p.m. when I pulled into our driveway. The house was dark, save for a faint glow spilling out from the living room windows. I grabbed my suitcase, already tasting the cold beer I'd snagged from the fridge, imagining Emily curled up on the couch with one of her reality shows. I didn't text her I was coming. Wanted the full effect of her shock turning into that big, warm smile I'd fallen for years ago. Quietly, I turned the key in the lock, easing the door open so I wouldn't wake Jake if he was asleep upstairs. That's when I heard it. Voices. Low, soft, laced with a giggle I didn't recognize as hers at first. I froze, hand still on the doorknob. Maybe she had a friend over? But this hour? My gut twisted, that instinct you get when something's off but you can't name it yet. I set my bag down silently and edged toward the living room, sticking to the shadows of the hallway. The closer I got, the clearer it became, two voices weaving together in a way that felt too intimate for a casual chat. My heart started thudding, loud enough I swore they'd hear it. I peeked around the corner, and the world tilted. There she was, Emily, on the couch, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders, her hands wrapped around someone's neck. And that someone? Jake, my stepson. His lips brushed her cheek, her fingers tangled his hair, and they were laughing, like this was some private game they played 100 times before. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd lost it, that the jet lag was screwing with my head. But no, this was real. My wife and the kid I'd raised, tangled up in a moment that shredded everything I thought I knew. I didn't yell, didn't storm in and flip the coffee table. My feet wouldn't move. It was like I'd turned to stone, watching them through a haze of disbelief. Emily leaned in, whispering something that made Jake grin, and I caught the glint of her wedding ring, the one I'd slipped on her finger 12 years ago. My stomach churned. How long? How many nights while I was gone? The questions hit like punches, but I stayed silent, backing away into the hall. They didn't see me, didn't hear the creak of the floorboard under my weight. I grabbed my bag, slipped out the front door, and stood on the porch, the cold night air biting at my face. I could have confronted them right then. Could have let the rage take over, smashed something, demanded answers. But as I stood there, staring at the house I'd built with her, something else clicked. Rage wasn't enough. I needed more than a screaming match. I needed a plan. They thought they'd played me for a fool, that I'd never suspect a thing. Fine, let them think that. I'd play their game, but I'd play it smarter. That night, I checked into a motel a few miles away, staring at the ceiling as my phone buzzed with Emily's usual goodnight text. I didn't reply. Instead, I started plotting. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. Sleep didn't come that night at the motel. My mind was a war zone, replaying Emily's hands on Jake, his smirk, the way they fit together like I didn't exist. By morning, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I'd get proof, figure out how deep this betrayal ran, and then I'd decide what to do. But first, I had to play dumb. If they knew I'd seen them, they'd cover their tracks. So, at 7 a.m., I texted Emily, "Hey, just landed. Be home soon." Her reply came fast. "Can't wait to see you." The lie stung, but I swallowed it. Game on. I rolled into the driveway like nothing was wrong, suitcase in hand, fake smile plastered on my face. Emily greeted me at the door with a hug. Warm, familiar, and now a total sham. "Missed you," she said, her voice steady. Jake slouched in from the kitchen, mumbling a "Hey, Matt," barely meeting my eyes. I nodded, keeping it casual. Good to be back. Inside, I was screaming, but outside, cool as ice. I needed time to dig and they handed it to me on a platter by acting like everything was normal. First stop, the security cameras. We'd installed them 2 years ago after a break-in down the street. Little wireless ones tucked in corners of the house. Emily never checked the footage. That was my job. Upstairs in my office, I locked the door and pulled up the app on my laptop. My hand shook as I scrolled back through the last week. There was night after night while I was in San Francisco. Jake sneaking downstairs after midnight. Emily meeting him in the living room. Laughter. Whispers. A kiss that turned my stomach. One clip showed them on the couch, her head on his chest, his arm around her like he owned her. I saved every second of it, my jaw so tight I thought my teeth might crack. But I needed more. Video was damning, but I wanted the full picture. How long, how far, why? That afternoon, Emily said she was running to the store. Perfect. I grabbed her phone off the counter, unlocked because she trusted me, and scrolled through her texts. Jake's name popped up, buried under a fake label. Jen. Messages stretched back months. He's gone till Friday, come over. Miss you already. Delete this. My blood boiled. They weren't just reckless, they were calculated. I snapped photos of the screen with my phone, every word a nail in their coffin. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. That evening, I overheard Jake on the phone in his room, door cracked, voice low. Yeah, she's all in. He's clueless. A pause. No, man, I'm not sticking around after this. She's talking about leaving him. My heart stopped. Leaving me? For him? I leaned closer, barely breathing. Just a few more weeks, then I'm out. She's got cash saved up. Cash. Our cash. The coffee shop profits I'd been pouring into our joint account. I backed off, head spinning. This wasn't just an affair, it was a heist. I dug deeper. Bank statements on my laptop showed withdrawals, small at first, then bigger. Thousands gone over 6 months, siphoned into an account I didn't recognize. Emily handled the books for the shop. I trusted her with it. Now I saw the truth. She'd been bleeding me dry, and Jake was her exit plan. I sat there, staring at the numbers, fury mixing with a cold, sharp clarity. They thought they'd outsmarted me, that I'd stay the oblivious husband while they built their little escape. Wrong move. By nightfall, I had a stack of evidence, videos, texts, bank records. Enough to bury them. But I wasn't ready to show my hand. Not yet. I washed my face, joined Emily for dinner, even laughed at her small talk. Jake slunk in, eyes darting to me, then away. They had no idea I was onto them. As I cut in my steak, I made a promise to myself. They'd pay. Not with fists or threats. Those weren't my style. I'd hit them where it hurt most. Their secrets, their lies, their future. Step 1 was done. Step 2? That was coming, and they wouldn't see it until it was too late. I had the evidence, videos, texts, bank records, locked away on a flash drive in my office drawer. It was enough to ruin Emily and Jake, but I didn't want a quiet reckoning. No, I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal, to watch their world unravel in front of people they couldn't hide from. Confronting them alone would have been too easy. They'd lie, cry, twist it back on me. I needed something bigger, something public. So, I hatched a plan. A family dinner. The perfect stage. The next morning, I played my part. Cheerful husband, oblivious stepdad. Over coffee, I turned to Emily with a grin. Hey, how about we host a dinner tomorrow? Been a while since we had everyone over. Friends, family, the whole crew. Her eyes flickered. Surprise, maybe suspicion, but she nodded. Sure, sounds nice. Jake shuffled in, grabbing a bagel, and I caught his glance at her. Nervous. Good. You're in too, Jake, I said, clapping his shoulder a little too hard. He mumbled a, yeah, cool, and bolted. They didn't suspect a thing. I spent the day setting it up. Invites went out to our inner circle. Emily's sister Lauren, my buddy Tom from work, a few neighbors, even Jake's old high school coach who'd always liked me. 12 people total, enough to make it a crowd, but not so many I'd lose control. Emily handled the food, lasagna, her specialty, while I ran errands, really just double-checking my tech. The living room TV was smart, hooked to my laptop. One click, and those security clips would play for everyone. I burned the footage onto a file, edited it down, 3 minutes of undeniable proof. No shouting match needed. The truth would speak for itself. Saturday night rolled in, and the house buzzed with chatter. Lauren hugged me at the door. Tom cracked a beer. The coach rambled about Jake's football days. Emily flitted around, playing hostess, all smiles. Jake hovered near the kitchen, twitchy, like he sent something off but couldn't place it. I kept it light, joking, pouring drinks until dinner wound down. Then I stood, glass in hand, heart pounding but steady. Hey, everyone, got a little something to share before dessert. A surprise. Emily shot me a curious look. Jake froze, fork halfway to his mouth. I grabbed the remote, casual as ever, and clicked the TV on. Thought I'd show you guys a project I've been working on. The screen flickered, and there was grainy footage of our living room, timestamp from last week. Emily's gasp was instant, but too late. The room went dead silent as the clip rolled. Her and Jake on the couch, her hands on his face, his lips on her neck, their laughter echoing. 3 minutes felt like hours. When it cut to black, chaos erupted. What the hell is this? Lauren snapped, staring at her sister. Tom whistled low, shaking his head. The coach muttered, "Jesus, kid." Emily's face drained of color. She lunged for the remote, but I held it high. "Matt, stop this. What are you doing?" Her voice cracked, desperate. Jake bolted for the door, shoving past a neighbor, but Tom grabbed his arm. "Sit down, man. You don't get to run from this." I stayed calm, voice flat. "That's all I wanted to say. You two can explain it now." Then came the twist I hadn't planned. Lauren, tears streaming, turned on Emily. "You told me Matt was paranoid, that he was making stuff up. You lied to my face." She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and played a voicemail. Emily's voice, weeks old. "He's been distant, Lauren. I think he's losing it." My jaw dropped. She'd been planting seeds, painting me as the bad guy to cover her tracks. The room turned on her fast, disgust, whispers, accusations. Jake yanked free and stormed out, slamming the door. Emily sank to the floor, sobbing, but no one moved to help her. I stood there, watching it unfold. The plan worked, better than I dreamed. They were exposed, humiliated, their lives stripped bare. But as the guests filed out, throwing me sympathetic nods, I felt the weight settle in. This wasn't victory yet. It was just the spark. The fire was still coming, and I'd make sure it burned them both to the ground, legally, methodically, and without mercy. The dinner left a wreckage I could feel in the air. Silence where laughter had been. Emily crumpled on the floor, Jake gone like a ghost. The guests had cleared out, their stunned whispers fading into the night. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the half-eaten lasagna, the weight of what I'd done sinking in. It wasn't joy I felt. Not yet, just a cold, steady resolve. They betrayed me, humiliated me, and now they'd face the fallout. But I wasn't done. The public shaming was step one. Step two was making sure they lost everything they tried to steal. Emily's sobs echoed from the living room. I walked in, and she looked up, mascara streaking her face. "Matt, please, let me explain." It wasn't what it looked like. Her voice trembled, but I'd heard enough lies. "Save it," I said, flat and final. "I've got months of footage, texts, bank records. You and Jake were planning to run with my money. Don't insult me by pretending." Her eyes widened then dropped. She knew I had her cold. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "He pushed me into it." Blaming him now? Classy. I turned away. "Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight." She didn't fight it. An hour later, she was gone. Headed to her sister's, I guessed, though Lauren's fury made that a long shot. The house felt hollow without her, but I didn't care. I locked the doors, poured a whiskey, and called my lawyer, Sarah. "I want a divorce," I told her, voice steady. "And I want everything. House, business, the works." She's been siphoning cash for months. I've got proof. Sarah didn't flinch. "Send me what you have. We'll bury her in court." I hung up, feeling the first flicker of control since this nightmare started. Jake was next. Word spread fast. By morning, my phone buzzed with texts from Tom, the coach, even a neighbor. Heard Jake took off. Crashed at some buddy's place in Tacoma. Good riddance, but I wasn't letting him slink away scot-free. I checked his social media. Idiot hadn't locked it down. Post from last night. "Life's messed up. Need a reset." Reset? He didn't deserve one. I screenshot everything, adding it to my file. If he thought he could just vanish, he was dead wrong. The divorce filing hit Emily like a freight train. Sarah moved fast. Within a week, papers were served, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. I handed over the evidence. Security clips, bank statements showing $20,000 drained from our coffee shop account, texts proving their scheme. Emily's lawyer tried to spin it. claimed she was manipulated by Jake, that she'd been unhappy for years. Unhappy? She'd smiled in my face while stabbing me in the back. The judge didn't buy it. Discovery revealed the account she'd funneled money into, her name, not Jake's. Greed, not love, was the real story. Court was brutal but quick. Emily showed up, pale and silent, no fight left. The ruling came down. I got the house, full ownership of the coffee shop, and she got nothing but a suitcase and a ruined reputation. She begged outside the courthouse, voice cracking. "Matt, I'm sorry. Can't we fix this?" I looked at her, once my wife, now a stranger, and shook my head. "You fixed it when you chose him. Live with it." She walked away, shoulders slumped, and I didn't look back. Jake's consequences were quieter, but just as sharp. Word from Tom was he dropped out of college, too ashamed to face his teammates after the coach spread the story. Last I heard, he was hauling boxes at a warehouse in Portland, cut off from the family friends who'd once cheered him on. No cash, no future, just the mess he'd made. I didn't reach out. He'd burned that bridge himself. The house was mine again, silent but mine. I sat on the couch, the same one I'd seen them on, staring at the blank TV. The sting of betrayal lingered, but so did a strange relief. They'd paid a price, not with violence or vengeance, but with the truth and the law. I'd torn their world apart without throwing a punch, and that felt right. The fire I'd started at that dinner had burned out their lies. Now I just had to figure out what came next. A year had passed since that dinner turned my life upside down. The house was still mine, quiet now, no echoes of Emily's laughter or Jake's footsteps. I'd sold the coffee shop 6 months back, tired of seeing her fingerprints on something we'd built together. The money went into a new venture, a small tech startup in Seattle, helping local businesses go digital. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and it kept me busy. Busy was good. Busy kept the ghosts at bay. That night, I'd caught them still haunted me sometimes, but it didn't define me anymore. I'd taken their mess and turned it into a chance to rebuild. Emily's fall was steep and public. After the divorce, she tried to salvage things, moved into a cramped apartment downtown, got a waitressing gig at a diner off Pike Street. I heard it from Tom, who'd seen her there, tray in hand, avoiding eye contact with anyone who might recognize her. Her sister Lauren wouldn't take her calls. The friend she'd leaned on had ghosted her. Word was she tried reaching out to me once, left a voicemail I deleted without listening. "Matt, I'm sorry, didn't fix a damn thing." She'd gambled on Jake and lost. Lost the house, the business, the life she'd taken for granted. The price of her betrayal wasn't just money. It was everything she'd thought she could keep. Jake's story was bleaker. He'd washed out of Portland after a few months, bouncing between dead-end jobs, warehouses, fast food, whatever paid cash. The coach had blackballed him with old teammates. No one wanted the kid who'd stabbed his stepdad in the back. Last I heard, he called Tom, voice rough, asking if I'd loan him a few $100. "Tell him he's on his own," I said. Tom related, and that was that. Jake had been part of my life for a decade. Taught him to throw a football, paid for his braces, but he'd thrown it away for a fling and a fantasy. Now he was a stranger, paying the cost in isolation and regret. I didn't gloat. Didn't need to. The law had done its job. Divorce court stripped Emily bare, and Jake's own shame chased him out of any future he might have had. I'd fought with evidence, not fists, and that's what mattered. Sitting in my new office one evening, staring out at the Seattle skyline, I felt the shift. The anger that had fueled me was fading, replaced by something quieter, pride, maybe. I'd lost a marriage, a stepson, but I'd gained myself back. That was worth more than the house or the shop. The real twist came late one night, months after the dust settled. I got an email, anonymous, no subject, just a link to a blog post titled "Lessons from a Broken Home." I clicked, curious, and froze. It was Emily's voice, raw and unfiltered, spilling out her side. "I ruined the best thing I had," it read. "I chased a thrill and lost my family, my dignity. If you're reading this, don't make my mistake." No names, but I knew. Comments ripped her apart. Strangers calling her a fool, a traitor. She'd bared her soul, and the world didn't care. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but I didn't. She'd written her ending. I was writing my beginning. I shut my laptop and stepped onto the balcony, the cool air hitting my face. A year ago, I'd stood on my porch, reeling from their betrayal, plotting in the dark. Now I stood taller, lighter. The startup was picking up, clients trickling in, a small team forming. Tom dragged me to a Mariners game last week. Lauren texted me, how you holding up? That turned into a coffee meetup. Life was creeping back, piece by piece. I wasn't whole yet. Trust doesn't heal that fast, but I was moving. Emily and Jake had paid for their choices, not with violence or vengeance, but with consequences they couldn't outrun. She'd lost her stability. He'd lost his potential. Me? I'd lost illusions I didn't need. The moral wasn't revenge. It was justice, clean and legal, letting truth do the heavy lifting. I took a breath, watching the city lights flicker, and made a quiet promise. No looking back. The past was theirs to carry. The future? That was mine.